Welcome to the Secure the Perimeter podcast.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Secure the Perimeter podcast. We have with us another entrepreneur, also United States Marine, and we're going to talk a lot today about entrepreneurship and the military. So thanks for joining us on the Secure the Perimeter podcast. Joining with us is Brian Cruz, CEO, founder of Sergeant Clean Car Wash. And so we're going to talk a lot about entrepreneurship and what that means and how we secure the perimeter as it pertains to doing things that you love to do, whether you're working for someone else or you're working for yourself. So let's get right into it. So Brian, thanks for joining us today, man. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I'm excited.
Yeah. So who is Brian Cruz? Tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of what got you started.
Oh man, who is Brian Cruz? Well, first of all, one of the things I'm proud of is I'm a husband and a father. So
Awesome,
I got
man,
two little guys, 8 and 11. Somewhat good husband, to my wife Melissa. We're gonna get ready to celebrate our 18-year anniversary here in
That's
August.
awesome, man. Yeah, good.
And a Marine and an entrepreneur. I started Sergeant Clean Car Wash back in March of 2013.
Yeah.
We talked about similar time frames with you and your business starting out, jumping off the cliff with the parachute or building the parachute along the way. But yeah, started. And Sergeant Clean now has 16 locations throughout Northeast Ohio.
Nice, man. Very cool. So talk to me about, you're a U.S. Marine. So talk to me about your military experience. How did that come about?
Yeah, so my senior year, I grew up in Elyria out of Lorain County and went to St. Jude's and Elyria Catholic, and I was off to go to college at Miami of Ohio or OU. And I remember my senior year, one of my good friends' grandfather was in the Marines. I'm talking like a hardcore Marine, Chosun Reservoir, Korean War, and he looked at me, and I remember as if he said this yesterday, is, you could be 80, Brian, and go to college, but you can't be 80 and, join the Marines. And I'm kind of like, yeah, duh.
That's legit, man.
But it just resonated in me, for days. And I went and I remember talking to my parents. I said, yeah, I'm going to join the Marine Corps and I'll go to college after that. And growing up, my grandfather on my dad's side, he often asked me, when have you paid your community rent? He was an entrepreneur. He came from Poland. And I was just so ignorant at the time, just to think, oh, that's money. That's a monetary thing. And it's really like giving back to his community. And as an entrepreneur, he was a fireman for 20-some years in Elyria. And all he did was, yes, make money and, run a business and do all these great and wonderful things for him and his family, but also was paying his community rent. So between the statement that my friend's grandfather said and my grandfather and my family values, I was like, yeah, I'm going to serve our country and give back. And that really started and catapulted me into the life of community service and just giving back to this great nation.
Sure. So talk to me about, your journey as a Marine. You joined the Marine Corps. Obviously, you had two options. You could go to college or you could join the Marine Corps. You chose the Marine Corps, right?
Yes.
So talk to me about that. What kind of experience did you have? What was your job, your MOS in the Marine Corps?
Yeah, my mom always likes my job. It was aviation ordnanceman, so 6541. So I was a glorified bomb builder on the air wing side of things. And but it was great. It was funny. My recruiter was not really forthcoming, when I joined the Marines.
They never are, man.
Yeah, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I want to be a fireman." My grandfather was a fireman. We have some family in the firefighting and service world. Long story short, I go to Pensacola, Florida, and they're like bomb building 101, and I went, "Okay, I think I'm in the wrong class. I'm supposed to be a fireman." And so long story short, I was an aviation ordnanceman. I was stationed first in Japan for a year. Then I went over with the Flyboys over in Miramar, stationed there for a while. And I remember getting a phone call from my dad's buddy, and he had said, "Hey, I picked up the plane dealer here in Cleveland, and I didn't see any bomb builder jobs." And I said, "Yeah, of course, Mr. Williams. There's no bomb builder jobs in Ohio." And he goes, "Yeah, you need to go be a recruiter." And I'm like,
Oh,
no,
snap.
dude, that's the worst job in the world.
So explain the recruiter thing to the audience.
Yeah, so a recruiter in the Marine Corps is, you get, a specific number of schools, you get a certain territory area, and you're kind of beating the streets, banging on doors, calling, area canvassing as they call it, and you're trying to find men and women to join the military, join the Marines.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is not what you want to do, So, but then I once again thought about it, I think a lot of life is just having good mentors, good advisors in your life, and then just pausing, opining on what's been said instead of making, like in the military, we're taught to be decisive, make a quick decision, especially during wartime where as a non-commissioned officer or staff non-commissioned officer, you got to make a decision quickly or people are going to die.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's also a point where you can pause. And I paused and I went, that's so true. When I get out, the Marine Corps is going to teach me how to sell. They're going to teach me how to speak. I'm basically going to be an entrepreneur running my own, recruiting office.
Right.
And long story short, I decided to do it and never looked back. And I was a recruiter for about 3.5 years, about 3 years out of Worcester, Ohio, and Wayne and Holmes County.
Got it. Very interesting, man. Yeah, and so just for the audience too, man, it's like it's hard enough being in sales, but when you're trying to sell the idea of someone joining the Marine Corps, which is not an easy task for anybody to get in. They don't just hand you an Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. You
right.
earn it. Right. Much like Navy SEALs earn the Trident, right?
Right.
They don't hand the Trident to you. You got to earn it.
Right.
And you have to earn it all the way and then some.
Yeah.
So that's an arduous task. So in the Marine Corps, being a recruiter, that's a tough job because, you're having to sell this idea to young kids that are considering like yourself, whether or not they want to go to college.
Right.
Same thing I did. College, military, I'm going to Marine Corps, and it was pretty easy for me because I knew, I didn't want to go to college, although I ended up taking college classes later. So talk to me about, okay, so you transitioned out of the Marine Corps. Talk to me about, Sergeant Clean Car Wash. How was that concept brought about?
Yeah, so I transitioned out of the Marines, and I worked for corporate America. So, at the time when I transitioned out, I worked for Oster Homes. It was a new home salesman for about a year, and then I worked as an executive banking recruiter in downtown Cleveland and out of Broadview Heights. And in 2008, we all know what happened, especially in the banking world, and no one was paying recruiter fees. And I remember my boss brought me in, and you could just tell he was crying during the day. And Brian was like, "Hey, I got to let you go. I've never seen this. I've owned the company for a number of years, and it was a blessing in disguise. And I could tell it was something he didn't want to do. It was an emotional, roller coaster for him and to protect him and his family. And I get it. I was the low man on the totem pole. He let me go, and my buddy at the time had a beverage store. So we teamed up and went from 1 to 4 beverage stores. His background was more in the finance, behind the scenes. Mine was more of the face of the company, process procedures, putting those, measures and running that. And then 2, it kind of, I believe in knowledge is power. So I went to a conference and a convention for NACS, National Association of Convenience Stores. Long story short, bumped into a guy who said, "Man, I got C-stores, but I also got car washes." And I went, "Car wash? What the heck?" It was kind of the day, where it's like, recruiter. What do you mean, recruiter? What does a recruiter do? And long story short, we went to a convention, fell in love with the industry. Absolutely. It really reminded me of the Marine Corps. People from all walks of life coming together for a common purpose, and I was able to elicit a lot of great answers to questions that I had. And long story short, I met a gentleman there named Vic Monteleone from Pittsburgh, but he was born and raised in Strongsville. And he said, "Man, I got just the place for you. It's a rundown, blighted property, blighted car wash. It's a hot mess." So I was like, "Oh, thanks for the confidence." He said, "You can't do any worse."
No pressure.
You can't do any worse than what they're doing. So long story short, he got us connected, and we purchased the property, and we grew 26% the first year, not knowing our from a hole in the ground.
Yeah, wow, man. So that's interesting. So, and we'll get into a little bit more about what your genre is at Sergeant Clean Car Wash. But, first I want to talk about the importance of my journey, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way. Going through the journey, and try to try to figure all this out, when I made the transition or made the decision to transition out of the Corps, which was insane for me. Anybody who knew me thought I was crazy because I was one of those Marines that I was going to stay in the Corps until they kicked me out. I wanted to retire as a Marine.
Archibald Henderson, right?
Yeah, Archibald Henderson, exactly. So when I made that decision, I had that epiphany to get out of the Corps, man. It was like I had this literal epiphany from God. I literally had a crystal clear dream that I wanted to get out. And I remember waking up that morning in Baghdad, and I had made the decision in my mind, I'm going to get out of the Corps. And so it was a pivotal moment for me. And so fast forward now, I put some years of experience behind me in the business world. And I worked as a network engineer for a while. But when I made the decision to become an entrepreneur, all of that journey paid dividends for me because of my combat experience in the journey in the Marine Corps, the tactics that we learned, the systems and the processes that we learned, the acronyms we learned, all came to fruition in that moment. Like, I learned the importance of high-speed, low-drag. I learned the importance of BAMSIS, the 6 troop leading steps,
right.
And I use it, even today in business. And so for me, the journey as a Marine, although arduous and relentless, pays dividends to me even to this day. So now I fully appreciate the journey as a Marine. And I think, and you probably feel the same way, Brian, I would compare being an entrepreneur to combat, right? Because in combat, if you run out of ammo, you're dead. In business, if you run out of money, you're dead, right? And so it's, people call it fight or flight, You've got 2 options, I think, in any situation. So for you, being the entrepreneur, it sounds to me like you found your niche because, you already had the training, your journey in the Marine Corps. You learned how to be a salesman in the Marine Corps, which is astonishing, right? Because being a recruiter is arduous. They think, oh, it's easy because it's a B billet, right?
Right.
And, you're just – you're working in an office, but they don't realize you got a quota to make, and the Marine Corps holds you to that standard.
Correct.
So talk me through that. Like, even when you transitioned into your business, how did all that come full circle for you?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that jumps into my mind is accountability. People say, I don't want to be micromanaged. I don't want this. But, man, I even here as my own, a business owner, and I have a partner, and Ken holds me just as accountable as I hold Ken.
Yeah.
And it's truly important that the Marine Corps held me accountable. And when I think of, JJ did tie buckle, right? All the leadership traits, BAMSIS, all the things that we learned, all the acronyms, all of the training, it comes to fruition at different parts in your life.
Yeah, man.
And I remember on recruiting duty, it was the first time I learned about candor. And I'm thinking, all right, candid, all right, I'm having a tough conversation or whatever. One of my favorite books is Crucial Conversations.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
But I remember I was like, I just had this premonition where I went back and I was like, I remember my recruiter could have been better at the delivery of what a aviation support job was, which was bomb building and the air wing, but also firefighting. You're going to get one of these two as opposed to, oh yeah, no problem, you're going to get that. So I remember, fast forwarding my life, looking at these young men and women, I put close to, I think 90, guys and gals in the Marine Corps, still have great relationships with a lot of them. And I just said, listen, I'm going to be around forever. They're going to, Lord willing, be around forever as well. And I'm going to provide guidance and wisdom and a good central, kind of leader in their life that can help them make life decisions. And I used to tell every single parent and kid, I don't care if you join. I'm going to get paid the exact same every 2 weeks, regardless if I put 800 kids in the Marine Corps this month or 1. You need to decide to do this. And I always told the parents, I said, listen, the more you talk them out, the more they're going to want to do it. So if you really don't want them to join the Marine Corps, just stop talking about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, Mom, Dad, you are not going to see them for Christmas I just was so candid, so direct that it was just almost reassuring and, just a sense of relief, I believe, for the parents and the kids so they could truly make the decision as opposed to like in sales, right? There's a little level of convincing the individual. And I thought, I'm going to do it a different way. And
So you switched up the tactic.
switch up the tactic. And I remember, my bosses in the Marines were like, "Oh, you're an idiot," and all those things. And then it just worked. And I just remember working my butt off for the first year. And I had a recruiter that I replaced, and then an ARI assistant recruiter instructor, Haywood. And he just said, "Brian, the first 18 months are it. If you work and bust your butt for the first 18 months, you're going to make it work."
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember one of the things that the big downfall, I worked with all the other recruiters. The recruiters in the office would ignore sophomores and juniors. Why? Because they weren't old enough to join. Well, I remembered, I was like, well, people who are seniors, they're going to join regardless. I'm going to do what I need to do. But I'm going to focus on the sophomores and juniors, thinking outside the box. Prepare them so they know me and I know them. So that way when they became seniors, it was an easier sell.
Yeah,
because I had a relationship with them. I invited them out to pool functions.
Yeah.
Which a pool function is just, different days, the month or week
Sure.
that we would meet and do exercises and learn about the Marine Corps. And it just made life easier. So I think of what I learned in the Marine Corps was outside the box thinking, things that I never knew I needed to learn or not know that I needed, candor or accountability. Those are some of the things that immediately resonate.
Sure. Yeah, and that's interesting, man, because, I have the same kind of philosophy as well. But, it's when you're in the moment, you don't realize what's required, right? You just kind of go along and you learn as you go. Right. And if you're smart, you pick up what they're putting down, right, as the right mentors that you get in your life. And that's a whole different topic, whole different episode, right, about finding the right kind of mentors. But talk to me, what does the acronym CARES mean for you?
CARES is everything. And it's funny because when we came up with our core values, and I spell it just like the Marine Corps, it's not CORE, right?
Yep.
It's more than just the word core. It's really CORPS, right?
Yep.
And CARES was, it's funny how it all came to be. Like we didn't think of, all right, let's figure out the word CARES and then put the C and the A and what's applicable. We probably had 15 or 20, values that we wanted to adhere to.
Sure.
And we can't be all and do all for everybody. And we were like, well, what resonates with all of us? And then it got down to those 5. And then I'm just staring at it. I was like, well, that just stands for CARES. And it goes to what we do, right? Our mission, provide a high-quality car wash coupled with superior customer service while being role models in our community, right? Caring about our community, giving back to our community, paying our community rent, and then caring about our team. Our team cares about the customer. So it's just all worked out well, and it's candor, adaptable, respect, engaged, and stewardship. And of those, candor is important. I think that the first and the last are the most important. Candor is just having candid conversations, telling it like it is. An example of that is, we've got a lot of team members that aspire to be, assistant general managers or, general managers, and they may not fit the qualifications or they may need to do certain things for a number of years in order to do that. And having a crucial conversation with them and saying, no, you got to do all these before you get there. And some people just leave. And it's like, this is not an easy road. It's not the yellow brick road where you just go right up to meet the wizard and boom, you get ignited or dubbed GM. So I think a lot of that process and stewardship, when you leave Sergeant Clean, we want you to have soft skills and life skills that you can go on. And if you have stewardship, meaning you're taking possession of the responsibilities, the materials, the things that are in front of you, just like in the Marine Corps, right?
Yep.
Your Marines, the mission that's at hand, if you're taking responsibility and stewardship and ownership in that, you're going to be an awesome person, right? You're going to grow up and be an awesome spouse. Right. You're going to be an awesome dad or mom or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what is your, talk to me about what your true north is. What is your true north? What is your center point of gravity for you?
Man, that's a good question. I would, really without hesitation, my family.
Sure.
I look at them and, I told you a story about my parents where, I didn't not have a silver spoon. I still to today have no idea how my mom and dad paid for private school, paid for hockey. Hockey of all the sports is the most expensive. And then for my sister, travel volleyball, travel gymnastics. And I just saw what they did for their family, and it's the same thing. So when I look at my 8-year-old and 11-year-old, I look at my wife and the centers of influence that I have an opportunity. I coach hockey. I was part of 23rd Veteran, which is helping veterans cope and get to a happier, healthier life with trauma. And all these different things I'm involved in. And I was just like, that's to me family, right? Yes, it's my kids, but my family, my community is like, that keeps me grounded. You know, the humbleness of where I started. Like I said, my parents had no money. They gave me no money to start the business. And at 17, I think I learned that from the Marine Corps, whereas I'm not going to be dependent upon anybody. I'm going to go out and do my thing.
Yeah. Very interesting, man. And so, you know, I call it, you know, paying your dues, paying the rent, right?
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like you described it as the same thing. And I'm not sure what it is, man, but obviously our values align because we're both Marines.
Right.
And it's insane because in the Marines they pound that into your head. They pound principle in your head. They pound values in your head, you know, and they indoctrinate that as part of your DNA, right? Because those, you know, in the moment of trial, it's those principles that pull you through.
Right.
Right. And I talk to people about this all the time. Do the hard thing because when it gets hard, it's that hard thing that will pull you through that storm that you're in.
Yep.
Right. And for me, I've learned to almost pronounce my faith even more because I've learned that in the journey of my life, you know, my faith has pulled me through a lot of different things, you know, to include combat, man. When the odds were stacked against us, you know, and we're going through An Nazaria, we're going through Tikrit, Fallujah, you know, and the intel that we were getting on the movements and, you know, the snipers and the AK-47s and the RPGs and all that stuff, IEDs, those things, you know, to me stacked up what makes my identity now as an entrepreneur, because I learned, like you said, how to think fast, be very decisive in the moment,
right,
versus contemplating, delaying, waiting. You know, everything has a time and place. So for you, you know, it sounds to me like, you know, you're very much aligned with that. You know, obviously your family is extremely important to you. My family is extremely important to me. In fact, I think our kids are about in the same age group, which is crazy. But for you have, I think you said you have 16 locations now,
mm-hmm,
right, throughout Ohio. And so it's really cool. So as we talk about this in the Secure the Perimeter podcast, you know, there's a lot of people that ask us questions about, you know, hey, I'm thinking about starting my own business. You know, I want to be an entrepreneur as well. I don't want to work for someone else anymore. I've made the decision, you know, and my advice is always the same. You have to be willing to get up and keep coming back. That's just all that there is to it.
Amen.
Because you're going to have hard days, man.
Right.
And the ones who don't make it just aren't built with the same strength.
Right.
It's kind of like my philosophy of the Marine Corps. Anybody can become a Marine, but the Marines isn't for everyone, right? If you really put your mind to it, and I hear people say, well, you know, I would never let somebody tell me what to do. Yeah, you would. Yeah, you would. Right. You say that until your feet hit the yellow footprints.
Right, yep.
Yeah, and it all changes.
Right. You're all equal.
In that moment, yeah.
It don't matter if you're 350 pounds or 110 pounds wringing wet wearing boots. You're all equal. You're
all equal, and they prove that to you in that moment.
Yes, they do.
So I always say that anybody can become a Marine, but the Marines isn't for everyone. And I say the same thing about entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. Anyone can become an entrepreneur. Anyone can own their own business and become the CEO of a company and be very successful, but it's not for everyone. You have to keep showing up. And I think for you and I both, we were taught at an early age, even through the military, you have to keep showing up. You know, you don't get to call off in the Marine Corps. Nope. Like, there's no sick days in the Corps.
Right.
You get up and you go, right?
Yep.
You go to formation, you do your thing, you do the PT, the physical training. So, and it seems to me that it's played out that way for you. You know, you're a successful guy. You've got 16 locations. You know, and I'd like to get into this at a later time. You know, we're kind of running short on time, but, you know, to talk about culture and what culture means and paying your dues to the community. I fully believe in that, man, and I believe that we're designed to serve people.
Right.
Right. And I also believe that God is a creator. You know, I believe God's a creator, and I think we're designed to be creators as well.
Right.
Right. So there's a lot of depth and context to that, obviously. But as an entrepreneur, we're creators, right? We're designed to create. We're designed to innovate. And, you know, a challenge comes up, so you have to use tactics to get through that. You know, we call it tactics. People call it decisive skills, skill sets on, how do I navigate the waters of this decision I have to make? What are the pluses and minuses? And you evaluate it, and then you come to a middle ground, or you make a, decision. And I would also go so far as to say that it's a lot of eating bowls of curd, right? It's like, you know what, I'm wrong. And oh man, or I'm impatient. Yeah. I just want to get through to the other side. I don't care how we get there. I just want to get through to the other side. Mm-hmm. When we talk about secure the perimeter, Brian, we talk about, locking down the perimeter, of our life, and how do we do that? And so as an entrepreneur, it's very much like the Marine Corps. We don't just get to the objective. We move through the objective. We don't go around it. We don't go under it. We don't go over it. We go through it, right? And I tell everybody all the time, you have to go through it. You have to be willing to go through it.
Right.
Go through the pain, go through the struggle, go through the storm. You had a setback. The bank called your note. You've got to come up with the money now. You don't have any other resources. You have to go through it.
Right.
Instead of avoiding it, saying, you know what, I'm just going to go bankrupt and I'm just going to I'm going to throw in the towel and call it a day.
Right.
And just give up being an entrepreneur. If you want to make it, you have to go through it. Right. And so it's exciting, man. It's exciting to learn about you and your company, your culture, your family, your values. It's really awesome, man. I think, there's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah, heck yeah.
But I also think there's a lot of similarities with a lot of entrepreneurs when it's like when they finally hit that breakthrough, they realize, I'm not going to get there alone. I can't do this by myself. It's going to require community to do this.
Right.
And so when they see the value in that and they make it through and they hit the breakthrough, then it's like almost all entrepreneurs I talk to say, man, I want to figure out a way to give back because so many people paid it forward for me to become the entrepreneur that I am and to get through all those battles, as we call it, to get there. So it's really surreal and it's awesome, to see that in you as well. And so how do people find you? How do people find Brian Cruz, Sergeant Clean Car Wash?
Man, well, you can go to the website, sgtclean.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Brian Cruz. You can find me on there, and I try to provide a couple posts during the week for some inspiration, things along those lines. And you can find me there, or I'll give you the email address if you need to, and anybody can reach out to me. I believe in reciprocity. People have spent time, energy and effort to help me in my life, and I want to be able to reciprocate that to others. Yeah,
very cool, man. So today, as we wrap up here with the Secure the Perimeter podcast, we just want to, be very inclusive about what it is to be an entrepreneur and how you can lock that down. And just listen, this is surface level stuff that Brian and I have been talking about being an entrepreneur, but it's important to take notes. And I'm sure there's going to be lots more podcasts that relate to being an entrepreneur and what's required of you. But I promise it is 110% is required of you when you become an entrepreneur, right? And so if you are thinking about being an entrepreneur, the way you lock that down, the way you secure that perimeter is to have all these things that Brian talked about during this podcast. And a lot of it starts with values. I think that's square one. Values and principles. Whether you decide to join the Marine Corps, the Navy, the Army, or go to college, doesn't matter. You have to possess those things because, again, those things are going to be what carries you through those hard battles in life. So thanks for joining us on Secure the Perimeter podcast, and until next time.